The opportunity of a lifetime had arrived, and with it came a mixture of anticipation, thrill, and dread. In his Jungen Erinnerungen, or his youthful experiences, Zemlinsky recalled how the offer, that is of Brahms asking him to come and pay a visit to him, how it caused him anxiety. Brahms had approached him, but the actual prospect of personally discussing his music with one of the greatest composers alive, quote, only heightened my already tremendous respect to the point of fear, unquote. Not so long ago, Zemlinsky's father had first approached his son about auditioning for the Viennese Conservatory, and now Alexander had been summoned by one of the greatest composers ever associated with that city. And so with excitement mixed with trepidation, Zemlinsky made his way to Brahms's third-floor apartment, less than 5 minutes by foot from the music school, and directly across from the majestic Baroque Karl's Church. Inside the apartment was Brahms's magnificent library filled with books and rare manuscripts, and the Gemütlich music room where some of the most profound music of the 19th century had been created. Next to the window that overlooked the Karl's Church stood the Streicher piano, lid closed. Within easy reach was the coffee machine. On the ceiling, a curious electric light hung from a track, allowing it to be positioned over the piano or the coffee table next to it. On the walls were sources of inspiration, Brahms's personal pantheon to the gods of music. A bust of Haydn, an engraving of Cherubini, a composer Beethoven had held in high regard, but who was now slipping quietly into obscurity, and a bronze-colored bust of Beethoven that overlooked Brahms's shoulder when he sat at the piano. Years earlier, Robert Schumann had proclaimed Brahms heir to Beethoven's legacy, and Brahms had since grown old with the giant's shadow looming above him. Zemlinsky must have taken it all in. Brahms sat at the keyboard and played through Zemlinsky's quintet manuscript, noting those passages that interested him, either because he found them good or because he found them wanting. Zemlinsky not only received valuable advice, but was also subjected to Brahms's notoriously curt manner during the coaching. Quote, questions and answers were short, gruff, seemingly cold, and often very ironic. On the other hand, Brahms was thorough and played through Zemlinsky's entire quintet, an indication of his genuine interest in Zemlinsky's edification. Zemlinsky also noted Brahms's penchant for consulting past masters when facing a musical problem. For Brahms, that most often meant looking to the music of Bach and Beethoven, whose scores he kept near his writing table. As Brahms proceeded to make considerable corrections to Zemlinsky's manuscript, Zemlinsky recalled receiving no words of praise or encouragement, but he nevertheless understood the master's intentions. Quote, as I tried shyly to defend the development section, which to me seemed rather Brahmsian, he threw open a Mozart string quartet and explained to me the achievement of its yet-to-be-excelled construction. It therefore sounded entirely justified and understandable when he added, thus does one go about getting from Bach to me. Zemlinsky etched the experience in his memory, and 2 decades later he could still recall all of it clearly, a testament to the significance of the event and what it meant for his future. Association with the master was critical both to Zemlinsky's musical development and early professional status, and getting to Brahms would prove one of the defining moments of Zemlinsky's life. It ultimately took him quite a while actually to also break free of the Brahmsian influence, but that's a subject for another discussion. The sonata that you're going to hear was started on New Year's Day in 1894, just prior to, about a year or so prior to this actual meeting. It was begun about 3 months after he joined the Tonkünstlerverein. He jumped on the opportunity to compose and perform the work for the society. And he wrote the work for his good friend from the conservatory, Friedrich Buxbaum, a cellist. The two of them performed it once in April of that year and never again. And the manuscript at that point disappeared. Buxbaum went on to play with a number of string quartets that premiered and worked very closely with Zemlinsky, premiered a number of his own quartets. And Buxbaum eventually fled Nazi Europe as well and went to England, a story which I'll come back to. The sonata is classically 3 movements. but it bespeaks a language very much associated with Brahms. There are no overt Brahmsian themes, but occasionally the color, the language of Brahms becomes clear. The first movement opens with a two-note idea, which he begins to expand almost immediately. And these notes basically come back. This was a technique that was also hammered home to him at the conservatory, to take a very small idea and exploit it to its furthest ends. And I think it would be very clear to you what Zemlinsky is capable of doing. This is one of the techniques, I think, that probably showed Brahms, really, a certain measure of Zemlinsky's talent. The second movement is a broad and passionate andante, very, very suggestive of composer in the flush of youth. It's a very, very expressive work, and it's characterized by a stormy middle section. Also, the opening idea, which is a quick turn, is another idea that he's going to exploit. If you listen carefully, once you get to know this theme at the very beginning, what he does with it at the end of the movement. The finale is interesting for a number of reasons, but particularly, I think, because it utilizes a technique that Zemlinsky really didn't do much with after this, and it was a lot of counterpoint. We're going to hear a lot of voice against voice, probably inspired by Bach, and possibly also by the kind of techniques that he learned traditionally at the conservatory. It works very well in this sonata. It's a very kind of a jaunty dance-like last movement. But it wasn't a technique that became part of Zemlinsky's playbook at all. Also interesting about the sonata is that it ends very wistfully and almost dreamy. He was not inclined at this point to give a blockbuster ending, something that I think was at fault with a number of his works later on. Here he's young and had the courage, I think, of his convictions, and ends the sonata on a hopeful, but on a kind of a wistful, sweet Viennese nostalgic touch. So hopefully you'll appreciate an ending, even though it doesn't end with fireworks. I should say two things personally, related to, I think, to tonight's concert. I'm honored and glad to be part of the Church of Beethoven series, and wish it obviously the best success. Just to show you kind of what a small world it is, when we moved to Durham 3 years ago, U.S. News and World Report had just come out with Durham being one of the top 10 places to live in the country, none of which we knew when we were already destined to move here. And it's been an amazing 3 years being here and seeing how this community is really flourishing, but I had no idea really how small and amazing the community is. A very close friend of mine, another cellist that I play with in Ohio, told me about this Church of Beethoven thing that he played on in Albuquerque, and how what a great experience it was, and did I know anything about this? Knew nothing about it. And it just so happens that now the second Church of Beethoven in the country is right here in Durham. Hopefully it will ultimately become as successful as the one in Albuquerque, which you can't find seats to anymore at any given Sunday. That same cellist saw a cello in Cleveland by a maker that he was very enamored with. And he told me about it. He said, you should check this guy out. He lives in Durham. And tonight I'm going to play a cello by this man that was completed literally last week. When I played the sonata at the Library of Congress in 2006, they had just contacted me to say the sonata had been rediscovered. And I said, I don't understand it. How can I not know about this? And they knew that I was invested in this Zemlinsky project. And they said, it's just been auctioned off. We know about it because we bid on it and we were outbid. So the Library of Congress was outbid on a sonata by an unknown composer, an early one. That in itself was exciting, and then they called me 2 days before I was supposed to go there to say, are you interested in playing on the Strad in the Library of Congress string collection? And I said, that doesn't give me much time to get used to it, but I wasn't going to turn down that opportunity, and so I played that performance on the Strad. A week ago, this cello was finished, and I've had several days to get used to it, and so for me it's a thrill to be able to play modern instruments here for you in Durham. So it's an amazing town that it all seems to be happening right here in Europe. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the sonata, and I'll be back, I guess, after your 2 minutes of silence. Thank you.